Well, hello and welcome to the Plain Talking UK podcast. My name's Neville Bounds and this is episode 425. In this week's show, a punch-up at Air France, a cracked Dreamliner window, and Ryanair reports record passenger numbers in August. Also, we'll be talking about the upcoming interview with Chris Burwell, and Carlos and I are off to Jersey next week for their international air display. Joining me this week across in the Plain Talking UK Master Suite studio is Matt Smith.
Oh, honestly, Carlos calls it that. I don't even know what a Master Suite studio is, but apparently I'm in it.
I just use that terminology because that's what he says.
That's what he says, yeah, absolutely. And our Lord and Master is not here today, so yes, we are.
No, he's on his holes, isn't he, in Norfolk somewhere?
I know. It's it's one of my favourite places to go. Actually, it's such a lovely part of the world, and living here, we don't like go to it much because of that for some reason. So
it's largely unspoilt as well, isn't it? It's a very nice part of the country.
Yeah. I've got a Broads holiday coming up very shortly, and I'm very, very excited about that. We've got a little 2-bedroom boat that we've hired, like one of these little broad cruisers things, for nearly 2 weeks, and I literally can't wait. It's going to be so much fun.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Excellent. Oh, that's very nice indeed. So what have you been up to this week, Matt?
Not a lot, really. Sort of come back from, I think I was back Friday, wasn't I? Having had a little week away in the caravan. That was quite nice. Very busy weekend on the radio, doing a couple of outside broadcasts and lots of sort of studio-based activities over in Dis, sorting that all out. But yeah, and then back to work for a rest. Yes. Which was nice. What about you? What have you been up to?
Well, we had the bank holiday, of course, on the Monday of this week, didn't we? So we got together with my grandson and my son and his fiancée. That was very nice indeed. And then on Tuesday, Mrs. Nev and I went to a wildlife park in Hertfordshire, which was very good from the animal point of view, but I'd forgotten how loud young children can be.
Ah, right, yes.
And
especially the excited ones.
When you get to a certain age and your children have grown up and kind of moved on a bit, it's a bit of a shock.
Well, even mind you, I mean, grandchildren can be noisy of occasions, I suppose.
Yes, but little Finley's not quite 2 yet. So
right.
He's at the manageable stage.
He's at the manageable stage.
So, no, it was good, though. Very nice to get out and about. But likewise, I came back to work for a rest.
Quite, yeah, no, I can imagine. So was it just you and Mrs. Nev, or did you take sort of grandkids and all that kind of
just two of us. And some top nosh was had there as well.
Oh, really?
Chicken bites and fries, and they were to die for.
Oh, really?
Great job of those, I must say. I was very pleased.
Well, that's unexpected.
I think I overdid it with the caramel ice cream, though, because I think I must have had a bit of a sugar rush during the afternoon.
Bouncing off the walls, trouble at all. Yeah, absolutely. That's any highlights in terms of the animals? Anything unusual there?
Well, they've got a really good selection of everything really, from reptiles through to tigers. What else? Birds. Everything.
Wow. Okay.
And really well run as well. Actually, very, very nice place. It's just off the M25 at Broxbourne.
Gosh, had no idea what that is.
There. So near Enfield. That's
lovely.
Neck of the woods.
Oh,
so it was fun. Nice. Yeah, very good. So once again, thanks to everybody for joining us in the chat room. We've got in the chat room that I can see at the moment, we've got Dirk S, Tanya's there, Mazouz, hello Mazouz, Bill's in there, Jonathan Warner, Richard Adams, a fellow called Carlos Stebbings.
I've heard of him.
Need to put the blue spanner of death on him. I think a bit sharpish.
Can you put a blue spanner on a blue spanner? I don't know.
Well, I'm going to find out.
Going to find out in a minute. Yeah.
During the course of this show. Yeah. Who else there? Masha's in there. Hello, Masha. Screaming Pizza is in there.
Oh, hello.
Jakob is in there as well. Thank you to one and all for joining us. That's absolutely fantastic.
Indeed, yes. Good house. A good full house.
It is. Well, we've been handing out some gifts in the last couple of days.
We have,
Matt, and we're never quite sure whether these gifts actually make it to their intended addressee, but I'm pleased to say that this one has. It's a 747-400 fuselage skin tag, which we sent to Dirk S.
He seems very pleased, doesn't
And
he?
there he is. He's happy with that.
He is happy with that, absolutely.
We're happy with that it arrived.
Very much so.
We also heard from Grant McCarran as well.
Yes.
His one arrived in Australia as well, didn't it?
I think his beat Dirk's, actually.
Well, I was going to say it actually got to Australia quicker than we got to Germany. So I don't know
Absolutely. Don't know what story
kind
that
of
tells.
facility we used for that.
Oh,
but,
Dirk says he is very pleased in capital letters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
That's what we like to hear. Now, you mentioned earlier on we've got a couple of interesting projects in the pipework now, and you were out filming last week.
Yes, I was. Yes. So last week, Nick and I were out in Wiltshire, just near Bath, talking to a fellow called Chris Burwell, who's written this excellent book called 9 Lives. It's about Chris's time in the military as a Cold War Harrier pilot. This has been published by Grub Street Publishing, our chums there, and they sent me a letter to say, we think you should go and interview Chris. So we did, or rather Nick did, and I took the recording gear.
Yeah.
So we have got probably a 5-part series coming up of the life and times of Chris Burwell in the military, and as always, absolutely fascinating to listen to these ex-military folks and their tales and the things that they've done in the past. Really, really interesting indeed. And as I was just saying before the show started, it seems that in the military, everybody seems to know each other. It doesn't matter when they were in active service or whatever. And a number of people that Chris knew, Nick had flown with previously as well.
Wow, it's a surprisingly small pool of people, as you say, sort of. Know each other.
It is surprising.
Indeed.
So
is it quite?
So I'm just in the process of doing some editing there. I think we're going to probably. We'll see how we go. We might play the first part of it next week, actually.
Oh, really?
If we're feeling bold.
If we're feeling bold and brave.
And these episodes will be about 15 minutes each, something like that.
Oh, great. So that's coming up in the next couple of weeks or so, possibly as soon as next week, as Nev was saying. So very much looking forward to sharing that with us. Now, also on the Friday, you were representing PTUK at another sadder event this time.
It was a very sad occasion, I've got to say. And this was the funeral and the celebration of life of Ivan McDonald. And Nick and I went to Ivor's funeral, met his family there, and they were very grateful the fact that we'd gone all the way there, because it was quite a long slog for both of us, but we're happy to have been there, and it was a lovely day actually, and you can see the grounds of the crematorium there, absolutely beautiful. And I think with these sorts of things you get to know a lot about the people that you think that you've known for so many years. And it was really interesting that Kirsty, his wife, said to me and to Nick that she didn't realise that he was into aviation to the extent that he was, and was in the chat rooms with the Airline Pilot Guy show and our show and sending in contributions all the time. She didn't realise he did that. He almost lived a separate second life, really. And it was absolutely beautiful. It was a lovely service. And then we went about 10 miles down the road to this venue here.
Beautiful venue, isn't it? What a lovely building.
It was beautiful. Nice food, nice folks there. Got to talk to his family. And what we did learn was that Kirsty, his wife, is actually about a 30-hour PPL holder.
No. Really?
Yeah, absolutely. She did her private pilot's licence back in the day. And she's also responsible for writing off an aircraft as well, which we did give her a bit of stick about, but actually at the appropriate time, not to now obviously,
no,
but at some point we'll do an interview with Kirsty, who can tell us all about Ivor's life, which will be really interesting.
Absolutely.
But also we'll hear about her flying experiences as well.
Absolutely. I want to hear more about that. This is sort of, I know we shouldn't be excited about an aircraft being written off,
but these things just sort of come out of the blue.
Indeed.
Absolutely, yeah. Really, really interesting. And I think that, it was a very sad occasion.
Yeah.
But of course, with all these things, it's a celebration of someone's life as well. And of course, Ivor was taken far too soon. It was terribly sudden and very shocking for everybody.
Yeah.
We had a good chat with his son, his daughter-in-law. At least he got to see his son's wedding back in April of this year as well. And we talked to a couple of other folks there who were pilots for Jet 2 on 737.
Oh, wow.
At Stansted and Manchester as well. So it was great seeing those folks as well and learning a little bit more about Ivor's life. So
Wonderful.
that was really, really touching and beautifully organised as well. So,
sounds good. So, as these things go, as you say, they're never fun, these things, but it sounds like it was a great opportunity to chat and catch up with a few people.
It was, and well, I was so pleased that both Nick and I were able to go, and Kirsty was very grateful as well. And she has said to us that she really wants to keep in contact with all of the aviation community as well, because she needs something to fill her life with.
Absolutely.
as well, of course. So, and this is obviously very sudden and very soon.
Yeah.
So, but at the appropriate time, we'll have a chat with Kirsty.
Absolutely,
and we'll do an interview.
And
with,
she'll be very much more than welcome into the family, won't she? Bless her.
Certainly, yeah.
Indeed.
So we're looking forward to that. So,
Indeed.
But
Right.
Yeah, so it was a nice service and a nice day. Yeah.
Indeed. Should we talking of aviation? Shall we take a look at some stories?
Do that. Shall we?
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. I'll press this button here, and something will happen. Hopefully.
Captain has turned on the seatbelt light. Please take your seats and fasten your seatbelts.
Well, this is an extraordinary story. It brings a whole new meaning to the term fighter pilots. This is on the latribune.fr, newyorktimes.com, euronews.com, bbc.com and bea.aero. It says that Air France pilots are under scrutiny after a series of incidents that have raised concerns over safety protocols on flights operated by the French flagship carrier. According to the French newspaper La Tribune, the captain and first officer of an A320 had a dispute shortly after takeoff and grabbed each other by their collars after one apparently hit the other. The cabin crew on the flight from Geneva to Paris intervened, and one crew member spent the rest of the flight in the cockpit with the pilots, the newspaper added. Air France has confirmed that the plane continued and landed safely after the pilots exchanged inappropriate gestures. The reports come just days after an investigation by France's Air Investigation Agency, the BEA, that found that Air France pilots lacked rigour in respecting procedures during safety incidents. The comments came from the final report on an Air France flight in December 2020 that suffered a fuel leak. The crew were criticised for not cutting power to the engine or landing as soon as possible as required by safety protocols. The plane diverted and landed safely in Chad, but the BEA report added that the pilots avoided a fire by chance. The report mentioned 3 other incidents at Air France from 2017 to 2022 where pilot instinct led to a less safe outcome than if they had followed strict safety procedures laid out by the company. It also highlighted what is called a culture favourable to this type of deviation, pointing to some language in the Air France pilot handbook suggesting that a substantial degree of autonomy when it comes to following safety procedures. Air France should put compliance with procedures back at the centre of the company's safety culture, the report concluded. Gosh, that's quite a moment, isn't it? Where should we begin with that?
I mean, I genuinely, I literally don't know. I mean, it worries me that pilots are sort of squaring up to each other. That's not something I would sort of expect.
Here's another top tip from your Uncle Nev. Don't have a fight in the cockpit.
No,
please.
No. I mean, it makes the other passengers nervous, for want of a better word.
And it's interesting that the cabin crew had to intervene and they had to come and sit in the cockpit at one point. So the thing is, with the reason aviation is as safe as it is because all airlines operate to standard operating procedures. And if there's anything outside of that, then there are emergency drills and all the rest of it. Of course, there is a level of discretion, especially if you think of what happened with Qantas QF32, where they had an uncontained engine failure. And that is an example of where sort of pilot deviation from the manual was necessary, and actually instinct did assist the crew in operating in emergency situations.
Well, you can say that about the whole Sully thing as well, can't you? I mean, it's that same
exactly.
thing.
I mean, they had to sort of busk it a little bit because some of this stuff's not in the manual. But I don't remember reading anything in any operational manual that deals with what happens if there's a fight in the cockpit between you and your flying colleague.
I mean, part of me, I mean, bearing in mind, obviously, I assume this all started on the ground, if you see what I mean, based on, or were they in the air?
Yeah,
I'm not really sure.
I'm
but
not sure it
I mean,
did.
part of me would like to think that if there was such an extreme expression of personal views, he says, choosing his words very carefully, is that I guess one criticised the other one's baguette's baking skills. That's very serious.
Good point then, Zach.
Yeah, absolutely. It was. I'd sort of kind of like to think that obviously if it was very clear that the pilot and the co-pilot weren't going to get on, that you would essentially delay that flight for, treat it like one of them hadn't turned up and get someone else in if they're not going to get on. Because you could argue that kind of anger and frustration in the cockpit is not good. No,
and I think it's all about being professional, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we've all done, we've all worked with colleagues. I mean, you have, and I have on live events.
Where you want to wring their necks? Want to wring their necks by the end of the day.
But for the sake of the show, we are professional and we do the job. Now, we might have a discussion with them afterwards about things that didn't go as well as they should, or the producer may be wagging his or her finger.
Indeed.
And also, obviously, we're not in safety critical situations usually either. But nonetheless, it's about being professional, and that's the start and end of it for me. But there has been previous incidents, not of that seriousness, serious level, but certainly where there have been departures from standard operating procedures, which have led to a difference of opinion in the cockpit and subsequent action as well.
Also, you touched on it there, Nev, but also, I mean, my hats off to the cabin crew. I mean, I bet they didn't think for one moment that they'd be diffusing and de-escalating some grief in the cockpit.
Well,
I mean, they're used to dealing with passengers.
But we've got to remember that obviously access to the flight deck is highly restricted. So, did one of the pilots get on the interphone to one of the cabin crew to say, folks, could you mind popping in for a second?
Yes.
We've got a slight issue to deal with.
Or perhaps they were on the ground and it was sort of all a bit animated before taking off.
I think there's more to come from this story, obviously with the official report, but there's stuff going on there that just really hadn't.
Stuff doesn't add up there yet, does it? But as I say, more details will come, I'm sure, in the giving weeks. Right, we'll move on to the next story then, if we may, Nev, and we're talking Dreamliners this time, and a story that doesn't fill me with a great deal of joy, I have to be honest with you. It's coming from Mental Pilot, AV Herald, and Aerotime.aero. Those are our sources for this, and it's the Dreamliner window that cracks mid-flight on its way to New York. So an LOT Polish Boeing 787 Dreamliner aircraft was en route to New York's John F. Kennedy Airport from Warsaw Chopin Airport, as in the composer, yes indeed, when one of its passenger windows sustained cracks cruising at 40,000 feet. The cabin crew notified the pilots immediately, and the flight crew initiated a descent to 10,000 feet, reaching 10,000 feet about 15 minutes later, and continued to New York for a safe landing. Following the incident, LOT Polish Airlines confirmed that the damage to the 787 window did not compromise the aircraft's pressurization. LOT also confirmed that the damage was to the electrophotochromic layer of the window only. The airline decided to fly the aircraft back to Poland with the window in this condition to repair it there. Now, of course, I suppose, yeah. So what they're referring to is that the bit where that they can electronically fade it.
Yes, they can dim the window effectively.
Indeed,
and of course, because the 787 is of a composite carbon fibre structure, this is why they can have bigger windows in there as well, which is a great from a passenger experience point of view. Same on the A350 as well. It's really nice, but things can go wrong. But I've got to say straight off that this is not a major safety issue, I don't think, from what I can see from the story. It's not as though the cabin was losing pressurisation because there was a hole in the window. It wasn't that layer that was affected. But I think the sensible thing was to,
well, absolutely. I mean, and of course, they're not the experts on these things, are they? Isn't it? So they follow procedure in stark contrast to the previous story we were talking about. They've followed procedure, as you say, and they've dropped down to 10,000 feet. And then when they got there, the experts have said, "Oh yeah, you don't need to worry about that. That's just the the electronic layer, if you like, that dims the window." And it's like, even me as a nervous flyer, when they tell me that, I'll be like, "Oh right, okay, cool." Because once you know what it is, but unless you knew what you were looking for, I guess you would. Even the pilot wouldn't necessarily look at that window and think, "Oh, that's what the problem is." It's
a good word though, isn't it? It's a great word in Scrabble. The electrophotochromatic layer.
That's a beautiful word, isn't it?
That's a big word, isn't it?
Indeed. It's.
But that's the main thing. They got it back on the deck.
John's touched on some of the stuff that you were saying there. Actually, in our notes here, is the 787 having big windows compared to most other commercial aircraft, although the A220 is pretty close. We all know that bigger windows mean bigger blinds, and because of the makeup of the 787 fuselage and all that, there isn't space for blinds. Not sure I 100% believe that, but anyways, that's what he's saying. Solution is to make the windows dim electronically, which is, I think that's quite a nice touch as well, because it means they can press a button at the front there. You haven't got to ask everyone to put the blinds up for landing and things, have you? So
yes, and that is controlled by the cabin crew as well. They can put all of the blinds up, all the blinds down, so if they want to. Anyway, the main thing is safety was not compromised, I don't think.
Indeed.
Follow the rule book. So
agreed.
That's a good thing, isn't it? So the next story is on the aircurrent.com, liveandletfly.com and the points.guy.com. It says that Emirates and United are plotting a code-share agreement, and in a somewhat remarkable turn of events, this is exactly what's going to happen. They're going to launch a code-share partnership. The news was reported overnight on Tuesday by industry publication The Air Current, citing people familiar with the plan. Hours later, United sent out invites to members of the media, teasing a September the 14th media event at one of United's hubs, which is at Dulles International Airport, IAD. According to the intrigue, the official Twitter accounts of United and Emirates also teased the event, which will feature United CEO Scott Kirby and Emirates President Sir Tim Clark. With the details of the co-share yet to be announced, it's all but certain to me that cash and award tickets will be bookable on each other's websites. So that's quite interesting, isn't it? Because they've kind of almost been here before, where United did have agreements with Emirates in the past, but then a month later United severed ties with 5 carriers which are based in the Middle East, which was Emirates and their sister airline Fly Dubai,
right,
as well. Going back several years, there was quite a huge battle between the big 3 US carriers and the big 3 Gulf carriers regarding the open skies policy between the 2 regions as well. At the core of the dispute were the 5th freedom rights, which is traffic rights granted to carriers that allow them to fly from the US or any other country with an intermediate stop in a second country before flying to their home country. In Emirates' case, it flies from New York's JFK to Milan's Malpensa airport and from Newark to Athens. But it wasn't just Emirates, though. Both Qatar and Etihad also had their fair share of issues in the US. Qatar flew the A380 on their inaugural flight to Atlanta in 2016, but they were forced to park at a remote stand and deplane and board via mobile steps, as accommodations could not be made for the aircraft at the one stand that could accommodate the A380. The feud between Delta, whose aircraft were set on stand at the time, and Qatar went quite public.
Do you know, I think I remember that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's quite interesting, isn't it? But I think those sort of code-share agreements are quite important, especially from the Middle East to the US. That's kind of quite a strategic, important thing, isn't it?
I like that. Richard Adams has said in the chat room, UAE, United and Emirates. Now, forgive my naivety here, but I mean, I wouldn't put. I personally would struggle to put United and Emirates in the same category in terms of their customer service model.
Well, that's a fair point, and you've only got to listen to Brian Coleman's comments from time to time about United to see that might be a reasonable comment to make. But again, it's all about connectivity, isn't it? That both airlines need access to each other's continents, and this is obviously code share agreements and points sharing and all the rest of it is a good way to do it. So,
I guess what I'm saying is, if I booked to fly on that route and it turned out that it was a United that was servicing it rather than Emirates, I might be a bit disappointed.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yes. Well,
perhaps
it'll be on one of their lovely 757s that you like.
Great. So yeah, that's fabulous news.
Yeah,
indeed. Right, we'll move on to the next story, and I believe, if I can find it, I think we've got this one with a certain Armando.
Yes.
Take it away, Armando.
This next commercial story is a bit of a sad one. It's from airwaysmagazine.com. Expressjet Airlines, the parent company of fairly new low-cost regional airline AHA, has filed for bankruptcy and ceased all operations. The airline cited the difficulty in sourcing aircraft, lower revenues due to COVID-19, and rising costs as the three main reasons for the bankruptcy. This airline, founded in 1987, Expressjet was once a leading regional titan, had previously operated contract codeshare flights under American Eagle, Delta Connection, and most recently the United Express brands. Now, after losing its contract with United to operate these United Express flights, the airline created AHA, which began operations on September 30th, 2021. The airline's chairman and chief executive officer said that a combination of conditions led us to this decision, despite the valiant efforts of our employees to overcome challenges, despite great support by our cities and airports, especially the Reno, Tahoe, and community there. We arrived at a point where termination of operations was in the best interest of our stakeholders. Now, at its peak, Expressjet operated almost 450 aircraft. It had been a rising star amongst regional airlines in the U.S. Of course, in July 2020, due to the pandemic, United Airlines decided to end its contract with Expressjet and continue operations instead with Commute Air, which is another United Express affiliate. Now, Expressjet announced that it would operate its last flight on behalf of United Express on September 30th, 2020, and then subsequently closed its maintenance bases at Chicago O'Hare and Cleveland Hopkins International Airport. Now, the shutdown of Expressjet left approximately 3,000 employees without jobs. That was a pretty significant casualty of the pandemic and its effect on the aviation industry. Now, almost exactly a year after ceasing operations under that United Express brand, Expressjet launched the AHA brand, which stands for Air Hotel Adventure, which was a creative attempt at sort of reviving its operation with a more modern spin. The airline operated 3 ERJ-145 aircraft from the Reno Tahoe International Airport to 11 destinations in the northwest region of the U.S. Just 3 weeks ago, the airline reported a record 100% completion rate of its flights in July, but the conditions of the aviation industry just are too fierce for the airline to continue its operations. So as always, we hear the airlines coming out of the pandemic. We hear some airlines are forming up, some airlines are booming, but like any other industry, there are some casualties, and this is an unfortunate one. Of course, our hearts go out to all of the employees from Expressjet and AHA, and wish them the best.
It's always so sad, isn't it, when an airline goes under? There's never, good reasons for it. I completely, get where Armando's coming from with this, and the decision has been made that's what they've got to do. But it's just so sad, isn't it?
I think the thing is that with any kind of operation, those overheads are what they are.
Yeah.
Fuel, maintenance, hangar space, landing fees, crew fees, salaries, flight deck salaries, everything. And you've got to have the passengers that are prepared to pay the money to use that route. And yet sometimes, the route can be fully utilised, and the airline can still not make enough money. And again, because we're seeing now, of course, higher fuel costs and everything else, even though they may have hedged the fuel up to 12 months ago possibly. But no, it's a real it's tough. It is really tough out there, and it wouldn't surprise me if there are more regional failures, sadly, for reasons of overhead and lack of profitability.
Indeed, as you say, and I mean, as you mentioned there, Nev, I mean, the story about the fuel situation is, we haven't heard the end of that yet. I mean, we've only here in the UK, for example. If you don't live in the UK, you might not be aware, but we have this sort of like spending cap that's been on our energy providers, if you like, and they've just increased that cap twice now, haven't they? I think first time it went up by 50%, and now it's gone up by a further 80%. And that will be exactly the same, presumably, as you say. They've hedged, no doubt, for so many months, or maybe even up to 12 months, as you say. But that, those numbers are, the 40% rise and the further 80% rise. So we're looking at a 120% cost rise in, avgas, potentially, aren't we?
Yeah, and perhaps the average passenger doesn't think about how much it costs to actually run an airline. As I mentioned, all those, the ground handling, the crew training, the catering, the diversions, maintenance, and an aircraft down because there's a fault with it and they can't operate it. All these sorts of things, the overheads associated with any kind of operation are just eye-watering, and it's very sad when this happens. Of course, it really is.
It is, unfortunately. Okay, we'll move on to the next story.
Well, at the other end of the spectrum, the Ryanair
from what
boys and girls seem to be doing quite well, don't they?
Indeed, they're doing all right, aren't they? So this is coming from businessplus.ie. That's our source for this particular one. And the headline is Ryanair carries a record 16.9 million passengers in August. Ryanair carried a record 16.9 million passengers in August, an increase of 52% from the 11.1 million that flew with the Irish airline a year ago when some COVID restrictions were still in place. Ryanair operated over 92,800 flights last month at an average load factor of 96%. Let's just digest that for a moment, shall we?
Yes.
96%.
Gosh.
Compared to August 2021, where the flights were just 82% full on average, which, let's be honest, is still not a bad load factor given the time that we were in.
I think they could chalk that up as a win.
Yeah, absolutely. The company carried 2 million more passengers than in August 2019. That's pre-COVID. And last week flew an average of around 3,000 flights per day, according to the European Air Traffic Control Agency, Eurocontrol. The number of people flying with the budget carrier on a monthly basis has risen every month since March, when passenger numbers were hit by the war in Ukraine, from 11.2 million guests at a load factor of 87% in March. Traffic numbers increased month on month to 16.8 million at 96% in July, when the airline was adding 100,000 guests in August.
I've got a couple of questions there straight away.
Go on, far away.
Have you ever heard the Ryanair CEO or anybody at Ryanair refer to their passengers as guests?
I knew you were going to pick up on that. That is, it's an unusual choice of words, isn't it? I mean, it's trying to make it sound like I don't know. But I mean, we've talked about this before, haven't we? Because it's like, weirdly, Ryanair are one of the few people or one of the few outfits that have had, I think I'm fair in saying, the least amount of impact in what's been going on outside, like in terms of flight cancellations and stuff like that, because they do seem to have retained their staff.
They do come in for a lot of stick regarding their regional operations and their definition of what a London airport is, or what a Frankfurt airport is, or whatever it is. But actually, by doing that, of course, because they're using these regional hubs or these regional airports, they are not subjected to the big costs that the major hub airports will be forcing on them. So, although all of the airports have been in the same position, the overhead associated with the operation is a lot less because they've chosen to fly out of non-main airports, I suppose.
Indeed, yeah. Well, and really, let's be honest. I mean, Stansted is probably one of their most major hubs that they're flying out of on a regular basis.
Certainly, Stansted and Dublin.
And Dublin, absolutely, was the other one I was going to mention there. And of course, the one thing that's quite unique about the Ryanair model is the fact that they also own the company responsible for their own handling, and that, I think, is a factor on why most of the airports are able to keep things ticking over, because they're sort of looking after everything more or less in house. When they did furlough most of their staff rather than lay them off, obviously during COVID times and things like that, and it's as dare I say it, they do seem to have done something right here.
No, I do not criticise them at all for their operation.
I mean, you still wouldn't fly with them, obviously, Nev. I mean, let's not be silly.
No, but that's a personal opinion and not necessarily the opinion of the podcast.
No,
but I just think that their model, especially when times are tough, as they have been, this does seem to have
really seems to work
worked for them. And if you think about the other major airlines, the big ones, KLM, Air France, British Airways, Lufthansa and others, and Alitalia as it was, they've had a lot of layoffs and furloughs, whereas Ryanair have been less affected by this, I think.
Indeed, it's and I mean, because they've been making amusing tweets and stuff, haven't they, about sort of jokes about other airlines' expense, haven't they, about things like cancellations and stuff like that, and like, if you're still wanting to go to Frankfurt, we have some seats available, that sort of thing.
Yes.
It's they don't miss a trick, their marketing department.
No, I cannot criticise their marketing.
And they don't care don't care who they upset either, I think.
No,
but there we go.
Now, this is a really sad story coming up. It's such a shame, and it was very kindly sent to me by Alan Loveday, who's down in Helston in Cornwall, and subsequently by Richard Adams as well. This is on the cornwalllive.com and also on the bbcnews.com, and it says that a much loved aviation heritage centre is being forced to close after Cornwall Council decided not to renew its lease and told it to vacate its home by the end of March. Cornwall Aviation Heritage Centre, which is the CAHC, said that the council's decision means it will have to close forever, while the centre, which is home to several aircraft and operates as a tourist attraction as well as an educational centre, is currently located on land at Cornwall's airport in Newquay and has been running for 7 years and is staffed by dedicated and passionate volunteers who have helped to create an award-winning attraction. However, the centre has now announced that it will have to close for good, as Cornwall Council has decided not to lease the property any longer and given it a deadline to vacate the site by March 31st, 2023, after providing an extra 12 months to allow it to try and find another home. The centre highlighted that beyond tourism, CAHC provides huge resources, facilities and opportunities for STEM, which is science, technology, engineering and maths, aerospace education bodies of all kinds. Primary and secondary schools visit regularly. Local college, aerospace engineering and travel industry students train with CAHC aircraft, ranging from jet trainers to in-flight refuelling tankers, and tourism and leisure cabin crew courses are conducted on board real airliners. The RAF, Royal Navy and British Army also come to CAHC annually to benefit from unique access to aircraft for training activities that are not available anywhere else. European Air Transport Command brings up to 120 personnel from 9 NATO participating nations to utilise the unique range of facilities for aircraft recovery training that are made available by CAHC at no cost to the UK taxpayer. A quote from the centre itself says that we've given the council 9 proposals and asked them for the opportunity to sit down around the table to talk about this, and we've been refused at every single juncture. We are going to have to close and scrap half the aircraft, if not more. The council owns 655 acres of land on this site. We only need 6 to 10 acres of that, and that is all we need. We are not asking for a penny from them, but are happy to pay rent. It will not cost Cornwall Council a single penny for us to be here. And as a reply to that, the council is quoting as saying that the council is reviewing the use of the land at the airport site to ensure that taxpayer is getting the maximum value for money from it, and to increase the economic benefit and professional employment opportunities for Cornwall. Cornwall Council and Cornwall Airport Newquay are not responsible for the operation of a private business, and securing a site on which to operate is the responsibility of the management of the centre. Cornwall Council has made it clear to CAHC that it will consider assisting them to move to a new location when a credible, costed and deliverable proposal has been developed. However, this does remain the responsibility of the centre. Well, that may be the case, but aircraft heritage, really important in this country.
Agreed.
I think it is a vital part of our history, especially as this is not just about aircraft heritage. This is actually offering training facilities to 120 personnel from
Exactly.
9 NATO participating countries to use the range of aircraft recovery training that are made available there, as it says. I mean, talk about short-sightedness. I really don't understand.
And also,
I really don't understand.
There's been a strong argument, as I say. So John's very kindly given us the quotes from both sides there, trying to give a fair and balanced opinion. And they've made it clear that, it's a very large site that the council have, and they only need a very small part of it, 6 to 8 acres of land. And they're also willing to pay rent. I mean, I'd be intrigued to know what their plans are for the site. I mean, that perhaps that's something that we're missing in terms of data, if you like, is what their plans are for that site, which is why they're not willing to go down that route. Because it does strike me as an unusual decision for a council to make, especially when it is something that is contributing towards the tourism industry and things like that. I wonder if we're missing a piece of the jigsaw puzzle here.
Well, and again, these people are volunteers that run it as well. So obviously, I'm presuming there's some staff cost associated with it. Many of them are volunteers to actually create this attraction in the first place, and it's been there for 7 years. So it's I hope there's some kind of reprieve for it, or they can find a new home for it. Or that the council have a second thought and actually allow them to stay.
This is the bit that's odd. This is the bit that's odd for me. Is like the council are willing to help them pay the moving costs to go to a new site. So as I say, it does make me think that there is a plan afoot that means that they can't leave them with a 6 to 8 acre site.
Yeah, as you said, there's almost something missing from this story, isn't there?
Yeah.
There's the full picture has not been painted here. I don't think. But whatever the situation, I'm very grateful to Richard and for Alan for sending this to us, because again, regional stuff like this and regional mobility, and we've already heard the other week about Loganair's not running their winter services into Newquay as well. So yeah, that again, connectivity throughout the regions and actually offering this kind of facility, I think is a vital part of it. I really do.
So I wonder if we could just pop a couple of the comments up that are in the chat room there. Jonathan Warner's, first of all, if we may.
Oh yes, by all means, yes.
He's saying that they have a great collection. The local council has completely stitched them up, giving them very little time to potentially rehome the aircraft. And then moving on to Richard Adams, obviously these are the views of our viewers, I should say, our listeners, saying the council is just obsessed with their crazy London Newquay idea. I think very short-sighted, and I have to say I kind of agree with that one. Good news for Carlos, though. Might be some aircraft going cheap that Carlos may be able to acquire. That's always a solution. As I say, and then Richard Adams is again saying that Brown and Envelope springs to mind. Maybe a big building company. I suspect that may be the. But again, I'm quite sure that the land that they're already on, if that was the case, could easily be, repurposed. The plan could, I'm sure, be very easily adjusted to, accommodate these people. Mark is saying on the WhatsApp, this is so sad. Why is it they just don't care about our history as well? Sorry, it came up on my watch. I do apologise.
Yeah, I mean, this again. The title of the organisation is Cornwall Aviation Heritage Centre.
Does exactly what it says on the tin. Yeah,
and that's what it's all about. We absolutely must preserve our aviation heritage in this country, no matter where it is in the country. Otherwise, we won't have anything to talk about.
No,
we won't have anything for the kids to go and see. And it's these sorts of things that inspire children from the schools and colleges to enter into the airline industry later on. I'm absolutely sure of that, and I think that if they start taking these things away, then the industry is going to be the poorer for it in the long term. No question about it.
I absolutely agree. Well, we'll watch this story, I think, with great interest, in the hope that a compromise can be sorted. I just hope we don't have a sort of another repeat of the Bruntingthorpe situation. I think that would just be absolutely awful. But we'll move on to the next story then. We're off to airtrafficmanagement.net for this particular story, and the headline is Air Traffic Control Academy opens in Florida. Bartow Municipal, that's easy for me to say, Municipal Airport plans to open a traditional as well as a remote air traffic control tower training academy in January 2023. This training centre is the creation of the Washington Consulting Group, provides aerospace and air traffic management services. WCG is known in the industry as the company that led the development of the air traffic control training program used by the FAA today. The national shortage of air traffic controllers has been an ongoing problem due to the recent wave of retirements and the lack of training occurring during COVID limitations. Combined with the overall increase in aviation volume, currently there are only two main pathways into an air traffic controller career: through the Federal Aviation Administration's Air Traffic Controller and Control Tower Operator (CTO) certificate program, or by training provided through US military services. Graduates of the academy can be federally certified air traffic controllers upon completion of the 10-month technical program and ready to be employed anywhere in the US. The academy will enroll 64 students a year at capacity. Bartow Municipal Airport is unique because it is a non-federally controlled tower airport that is locally operated, allowing for private sector air traffic control training to occur. Additionally, the Washington Consulting Group is partnering with Polk County School Systems Workforce Development Program to establish a long-term apprentice pipeline into the career field. Now, John has actually just added in here that Bartow is next to Lakeland, Florida. It's about halfway between Tampa and Orlando, if you just wanted to sort of try and locate that tower. So, I mean, this,
well, that's good, isn't it? Again,
is.
getting people through the system because of the air traffic control shortage.
Yeah. I think I may be speaking out of turn here, but I think it sort of echoes a bit of a problem we have here in terms of staffing issues and air traffic control on that. I think it's sort of across the industry, isn't it? Where
Absolutely, and recruitment is a big thing, and especially with the people that were laid off during the pandemic as well, either trying to get those folks back or. Some of them may have left the industry entirely.
Retirements and things like that. Yeah,
absolutely. And perhaps they get to that age, perhaps they're not quite at retirement age, but they think, well, actually, I don't really want to do another couple of years of this, so I'm going to take early retirement.
I've done my bit, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've done my bit.
Yeah. So the next story is on paxx.aero, and it says that EasyJet and the leading lounge operator, Number One Lounges, is teamed up last year to open the new lounge in Gatwick. The Gateway offering a smidgen of EasyJet branding. And EasyJet is happy to sell access to the space for passengers. But unlike other legacy airlines, EasyJet does not have a more traditional Eurobiz business class offering, so complimentary lounge access is not typical for any of its passengers. Over the next 3 months, however, EasyJet will trial the bundling of lounge access for its FlexiFare customers. The FlexiFare option also includes a large cabin bag, a 23 kilo hold bag, free upfront seat, use of the dedicated EasyJet Plus bag drop, fast track security, speedy boarding, free flight and route changes, and an eat, drink, shop voucher. Ali Gaywood, who's UK country manager for EasyJet, noted that this is just for a trial period. Don't go mad, will you? Well,
I mean, it looks nice.
Yes, no, absolutely.
I'm just trying to sort of describe. I mean, does that look like a typical lounge to you, Nev? I'm just trying to describe it to the audio listeners, really.
I think there's some similarity there between lounges that I may have frequented in the past. But yeah, looks very nice, very airy, isn't it? And
snacks available. That's the key.
I wish you didn't have to pay to go in them, though. That is the Gateway Lounge itself is £30 for the first hour and then £10 per hour after that. I mean, it's not diabolical, but it would be nice, wouldn't it, if you didn't have to pay for it?
I suppose again, it's one of those. It's like, I mean, I wouldn't begrudge. For the experience, does that make sense? So, like, if I'm going to be spending a reasonable amount of time in the airport before I get on my flight or whatever, if that maybe not a connecting flight, but if I've arrived nice and early and I'm through security, etc. If I'm going to get like an hour and a half to sit in the lounge, then I probably wouldn't begrudge paying that £30 just because I can be somewhere nice and airy, comfortable. Presumably that fee includes a snack or two. I mean, you could easily munch through, if there's two of you could easily munch through 60 quid eating and drinking in the airport, let's be honest. And no guarantee of having a comfortable space to sit in afterwards as a result of that. Because they do encourage you to move on, don't they, when you're when you're at the simple, the Normalton side.
Just noting in the chat room that Neil Braden has joined us. Hello, Neil. Hope you are well.
Neil.
And nice to see you again. You're normally on the golf course, usually, aren't you, somewhere?
At this time of night.
Well, he's the fella does play a lot of golf. So,
oh dear.
Yes,
I want to do what he does for a living.
No, absolutely. But,
indeed.
Well, that's where we come to the end of the commercial section of the show. Next is the final part of the interview that Carlos did with Patrick and Linda at Seething. Now, you'll remember that this intrepid couple took their long easy almost all the way around the world. Absolutely fascinating journey they've had. So we started, Carlos started asking them about some of the technical aspect of the aircraft, and then he talks to them about some of the special modifications that they had to do to the long easy.
Technically wise, bit of sort of specs about the aircraft. Obviously, the tanks hold how much fuel?
204.5 litres. So it's enough for about 8 hours endurance.
8 hours, okay. So
if the bladder can last that long.
And also something else which is different to a lot of the other the EZs that are here and Dan's as well, just over there, is that you've got an additional kind of storage device on this aircraft, haven't you? Which
yes, we have these baggage pods which were designed by an American gentleman called, I think, Bruce Tift, I may have this incorrect, who used to make propellers, and it was a way of transporting propellers to his clients. So one of these baggage pods, as we call them, is the size of a propeller, a two-bladed propeller. And people realised, they saw his aircraft, his Long Easy that had these, realised it would be good for baggage. And we decided for our trip we needed somewhere to store. The inside of the aeroplane was full of kind of safety equipment that we needed for the two of us, but we needed somewhere for our luggage. So we got approval from the LAA to put these on. We were allowed 10 kilos each in each pod, so 22 pounds of weight. And we're quite religious that we don't go over that, and it has to be weighed, obviously. Linda made some conformal bags.
So a larger one which goes in the front and a little one that goes in the back. Well, the little ones we put the covers in, because we take winglet covers, canard covers and main fuselage, main canopy covers with us. Just for that extra protection, because the plane does leak a little bit in the rain. And it just as a, you know, and but then the main one we put our clothes in, but all I can take is a carrier bag, really, with clothes in. The lightest.
We relate a story that we were invited by a couple to accompany them in a four-seater version of the Canard aeroplane called a Defiant. Defiant is much bigger, obviously four-seater, but it also has an engine at the front as well as an engine at the back. Oh, wow. And they said to us, would you come to the Bahamas with us? So we said, yes, well, we could do that. Not in our aeroplane, we were travelling with them. And we turn up with 2 carrier bags, one each. And they had wheelie bags, they had an ice box for food, they had probably a case of beer. And we're thinking, and we have 2 carrier bags. And this was the difference between their aeroplane, which is very much a station wagon, and this, which is more like a 2-seater sports car with absolutely no room at all.
But you love flying it, though.
It's fast, it has its drawbacks, it lands fast, it needs longer runways than the RVs. But the reason why I built it in the first place, to me, it doesn't look like any other aeroplane out there. And it has helped us on our trip.
Yeah.
We've been to airfields, we've packed up the aeroplane, it's as it stands now on its nose with its covers on, and we'd go off to the terminal and we'd turn back and there would be a group of people having their photograph taken around it.
Yeah, it's probably thinking, what on earth is this? Yeah.
And it has broken barriers down when there's been a language issue, a technical issue, a paperwork issue. People just... We were in... between Thailand and Malaysia, the island of Phuket, was it? Or
no, it wasn't.
You know where I mean, Phuket, that area anyway. You'll edit this out. You'll look at the island and you'll tell me. And we arrived there and we got through the terminal the wrong way, but we got to the customs hall and we went into the customs official's office. And he said, well, I have to see this aeroplane. He says, I need to inspect it. So we went to the aeroplane and all he wanted was his photograph taken with it.
Oh, wow.
But we actually came through we came out
Penang.
Penang. Yes. We'd followed the sea. The door was open and it shouldn't have been, because it was from...
landside to airside, and we were going airside to landside.
And we ended up the wrong side of customs. How on earth did you get here? Well, we just came through the corridor. The door was open where the sea was, and we just came through. it shouldn't have been open. You should have gone a bit further round and gone in another door.
But it never became an issue,
No.
which I think is testament to this aeroplane. It has that influence on people.
I have to ask myself, this is purely just for my own interest, because Malta is a very special place for me. You've flown into Malta with this. How was that?
It was interesting when we landed and we parked right at the very end where some of the big
Maintenance
hangars
Okay,
were.
on the
There's
western
an apron there, and as we were going down the runway, the dogs were going across in front of us. Across the runway in front of us.
The other thing that happened was that this big 45, 46 seater bus came to collect the two of us to take us to the terminal.
That's Malta.
As Malta, and obviously we were going to pay for it. No, they were delightful. It was beautiful to fly there. It wasn't an issue. We had got in contact with the Aero Club, who are just in the kind of the southeast corner of the airfield, and we didn't see how to get to them. But they were helpful in making sure that we didn't have any issues.
Yes.
So we've done a little bit of research every time we've gone anywhere. We normally get in contact with flying clubs. So, for example, like Seething, you just either phone them up or email them. You say, we want to come, we want to maybe stay for a couple of days, couple of nights. How do we do it? Is there anything we should do special? What can you help us? And we found most places around the world will do that for you.
Yeah.
It's been great.
Yeah.
So, kind of wrap up, but what are the plans for the future? What have you got any big plans kind of on the burner ready to go?
Well, we still have the small issue of not actually completing a circumnavigation. But of course, and Russia, we cannot do it without going into Russia, and that's not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, sadly.
We've looked at ways. My initial thought was that we could do the Aleutian chain of islands to the western end and then drop down to the Kamchatsky Peninsula. It's Russia, but obviously it's not relatively that far to Japan. Even so, on this aeroplane it would be about a 10 to 12 hour flight, and we just don't have the range. So without Russia, as Linda said, we can't do it. So I think we will do more European travelling. There's a lot of Europe I'd like to go. We'd both like to go to kind of North Cape, Norway and Finland. I think that would be a really good thing to do. We prefer actually colder countries to hotter countries, but I don't know why that would be.
Well, there's more of an issue with being hot and high, and being able to get fuel. And we were taking off. Was it from Libya?
No.
Was it Libya?
Dubai?
No. Where we'd stopped. Was it Saudi?
Riyadh in Saudi.
Riyadh
in Saudi.
Riyadh, yes, not Libya. Sorry, Riyadh, and they wanted us at a certain height by a certain time from leaving, and the battery was saying, I'm trying, but we just, because it was so hot and it was high taking off, it just took a long time to be able to build up the speed to get up there.
Having said that, we went to Arequipa in Peru, and it's quite high. I think the elevation is 8.4 or something like that, and it was a warm day. And I have to say, the aeroplane just performed magnificently. It never was an issue. We have the bigger, let's just say the O320 engine, 160 horse. We have a good propeller, and the aeroplane performed magnificently. It was never an issue. So it's looked after as well.
Yes. Our guardian angels have looked after us.
So we always ask everyone we talk to on the show a question. It's a kind of put you on the spot question. Obviously, you're not a pilot, Linda, but you have lots of knowledge of aircraft. And it's a question about, if given the chance to fly any aircraft, whether it be GA, commercial, military, anything, retired, still flying, and you were given the option or the chance to go and hop in that on that cockpit and fly that aircraft.
Spitfire.
There we go. Nice and easy.
I
And
think.
Patrick, same for you.
Linda kindly, for a special birthday, did get me a flight in the two-seater out of Duxford, which I have to say was delightful. Made more so that the pilot in the front seat was ex-BA 777 who I knew. So that made it like a boys' day out, which possibly made it a bit more special than it might have been for maybe a non-flyer. So that was fun. Any aeroplane?
Anything you like. It could be
Really?
anything.
Any aeroplane. Gosh, it is an on-the-spot question. If I think I would say Spaceship One.
Really? That's one we haven't had before.
We've been very fortunate to meet and chat in a social situation, Mike Melville.
Okay.
Mike and Sally are two of the most delightful people in the world.
Unassuming. They're lovely. Really nice.
I'm sure you know Mike Melville's history. He and Sally, South African, came to the UK, they eloped, they got married here, went to America. Mike had built the first Very Vegan. They went and kind of camped on Bert Rutan's doorstep and he gave them a job, and the rest is history. His last flight in Spaceship One, corkscrewing up to 350,000 feet or whatever it was, just has to be the most amazing flight that I think any pilot has flown, actually handled. And I think he's to be commended as possibly the best pilot ever in the world. But to have been alongside him on that flight would have been just something. So I would put me down for Spaceship One.
Okay, we'll try and arrange that. We'll try and get that sorted out for you. A few quid, a few pounds.
Yeah, just a few. Yes.
I have a feeling it's in the Smithsonian Museum now, so it's unlikely to happen, but it would be great.
It would be lovely.
Excellent. Well, Patrick, Linda, thank you very much for taking time out of your day here at Seething today to talk to us. It has been absolutely fascinating, and honestly, the listeners will love this. So we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
For the
Thank you very
future.
much. Thank you.
And lots of clear skies and tailwinds.
Yes,
And,
especially tailwinds. We love tailwinds.
And all the very best, like I said, for the future. Take
Thank
care.
you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you.
Carlos.
Bye.
Discover the pioneers of speed and adventure at one of the UK's most iconic museums. Whether it's a tour of the legendary Concorde, a walk around the Brooklands Aircraft Factory, or maybe a behind-the-scenes look at the McLaren automotive cars, the Brooklands Museum has it all. Based at Weybridge in Surrey, it's the perfect day out for all the family. We can also host your private function or meeting in one of our amazing event suites. With so much to see and do, come and take a look at Great Britain's history of speed and flight. Find out more by going to www.brooklandsmuseum.com or give us a call on 01932 857 381. That's 01932 857 381. What a seriously great set of interviews that was, and
Great, was that?
the space one. I think that's genuinely not one we've heard before. Is the Spitfire's a popular choice? I know.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely. No, I think it was Richard in the chat room was saying that the couple are even more interesting than their aircraft.
And their aircraft is a really bizarre. I mean, that long EZ is a very strange thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But no, I mean, what a tale of what they've been through, and with all the weather and operational difficulties and all the rest of it. But they're fascinating folks to talk to, and thanks ever so much for Dan at Seething for setting that interview up for us as well. It was great, and we've been delighted to bring that to you. So that was part 3, the final part of our chat with Patrick and Linda.
Indeed.
So next up,
are you ready, Nev?
it can only mean one thing, can't you? This is a bit of the show I've really been looking forward to. It's the military.
Lots of bogeys 13550, Angel 16, heading 340. Okay, now undersea bogeys.
This first military story is from military.com, and I was actually a little bit surprised at how much coverage this received in the national media. But the Army has grounded its entire fleet of Chinook helicopters while it works to fix some fuel leaks that have caused an unspecified number of engine fires. That's according to an Army statement. They said that they were grounding its entire fleet of about 400 aircraft out of an abundance of caution, stressing that no deaths or injuries have resulted from these fires. A spokesperson recently said that the Army has identified the root cause of the fuel leaks that caused this small number of engine fires among an isolated number of H-47 helicopters, and they are currently implementing some corrective measures to resolve the issues. Obviously, the safety of their soldiers is the Army's top priority, and they are going to ensure that the aircraft remain safe and airworthy. Now, the statement did not provide any details on the repair timelines, nor what operations or trainings could be affected by the grounding. But as you can imagine, an entire fleet of helicopters is going to really set back some of these required training events and even some potential operations downrange. The statement did suggest that some of the Chinooks could be back in the air pretty shortly. About 70 helicopters are believed to have this faulty part that had been connected to this problem. Now, the Chinook, as you guys know, has been a staple of Army aviation since its introduction about 60 years ago. This airplane has been carrying troops and cargo on battlefields from Vietnam to Afghanistan, Iraq, Middle East, Africa, pretty much everywhere. Now, the current model, the CH-47F, is the Army's only heavy lift cargo helicopter to support combat and other critical operations. The issue that prompted the grounding actually stems from an engine part known as just an O-ring. That's according to a statement from Honeywell International, which actually makes the engines for the Chinook. The O-rings are used to create seals between engine parts to prevent leaks. So while investigating some of these incidents involving the Chinooks, Honeywell and the Army discovered that these O-rings were not meeting Honeywell design specifications and were installed in the engines during routine maintenance according to the contractor. Now, the faulty O-rings aren't made by Honeywell, but they are being addressed by that company. And of course, they're working diligently with the Army to provide replacement O-rings on all of the affected Chinooks. Now, of course, the grounding of the Chinook fleet is the latest in a string of major aircraft issues with the military. Earlier this month, we talked about Air Force Special Operations Command grounding its entire fleet of CV-22 Ospreys over an issue with the clutch. The Marine Corps, of course, continued to fly these, and there's also been the big ejection seat issue that affected the Air Force and Navy, the Marine Corps, as well as all the F-35s and F-18s that are operated by our partner nations. So, in one way, it's sad to hear that aircraft are being grounded, but on the other hand, it's great that the maintenance procedures are thorough enough that they are discovering these issues without anybody getting hurt. So we'll look to see in the next couple of weeks what happens with the Chinook fleet.
So, I'd love to say that I completely understood everything that Armando was saying in that particular story. I've heard of the word Chinook. And it's a fascinating aircraft, and essentially what I'm going to do now is refer to Jonathan Warner for a full explanation, because I'm not really
well,
sure.
the thing that interested me at the beginning of all that was when he was talking about his 10.5-hour flight.
Okay.
Now, I'm not sure that I could last that long, to be honest with you, without a comfort break of some sort.
Right, yes. There is a chance perhaps that, there was a receptacle on board. Yes. But anyway, sort of going back to this particular aircraft, though. It's as you say, it's more stories of stuff being grounded, isn't it? Which is not really what we want to hear.
No.
Especially when there's fire risks and things involved. It's fixing fuel. You don't want a fuel. You don't need a fuel leak in flight, do you? That's
suboptimal.
Suboptimal, indeed. Yes. So
we're going down under for the next story, aren't we?
We are indeed. Yes, absolutely. We're off to talk British jets with a massive combat exercise in the works.
This next military story was actually sent in by listener David Kay and is from the UK Defence Journal.org. Royal Air Force Typhoon fighter jets and the Voyager air-to-air refueling tanker are taking part in a major Australian air exercise for the first time. Hosted by the Royal Australian Air Force, this exercise, named Pitch Black, will see up to 100 aircraft and around 2,500 personnel from 17 nations training together for about 3 weeks. The exercise is being conducted primarily from RAAF bases in Darwin and Tyndall in the Australian Northern Territory. According to Air Vice Marshal Phil Robinson, the Air Officer Commanding No. 11 Group, he was quoted as saying, "An event such as Pitch Black is extremely important to the RAF as it tests the ability to deploy air power at speed to any part of the world, in addition to the valuable training opportunity with key partners and allies." The UK's participation in such a significant air exercise in the Indo-Pacific highlights the importance placed on the region. The complexity of this aircraft has also given the planning staff at 11 Group, together with RAF personnel at various embassies and high commissions, the opportunity to demonstrate the RAF's ability to project and deliver combat air power in the Indo-Pacific. Now, the UK's contribution to Exercise Pitch Black is designed to be a tangible demonstration of UK air power and highlights the UK's ability to deploy rapidly at a long range, according to the RAF. They said in another statement, it also illustrates the UK's desire to build professionalism and enhance international military relationships for the safe and effective conduct of air operations with regional and partner nations. Participation in such exercises support the UK government's identification of the Indo-Pacific region as being critical to the UK's economy, security, and global ambition to support open societies. The RAF's participation, therefore, is designed to deepen defense engagement in the region in support of this shared prosperity and regional stability. Now, the first week of this exercise comprised of fighter integration training designed to improve the word we all love, interoperability, ahead of some more complex and collaborative training in the second week. Now, throughout the exercise, the Voyager will refuel fast jets from other participating nations. And then once the exercise concludes, the RAF contingent will be returning to the UK via India, where during a short stopover, it's planned to conduct a brief period of bilateral training with the Indian Air Force. In this exercise in Australia, some of the participants are the UK, Indonesia, India, Singapore, Japan, the Republic of Korea, Philippines, Thailand, UAE, Canada, Netherlands, Malaysia, New Zealand, France, Germany, and the US. As I always say, it's very important for partner nations to do these exercises, as evidenced in the conflict in Eastern Europe right now. It's very important for air forces and militaries to be able to work together when brought together in a very rapid timeline. So these exercises are critical to sharing those tactics, techniques, and procedures between the air forces and the military. So well done to the Australians for hosting this.
Well done indeed. Going to be an interesting exercise, isn't it? I do love these sort of multi-force collaborations. I think they're a really good. I mean, let's hope they never have to be put to test, of course. But these
I think it's always good when. I mean, I remember Nick saying his time at the RAAF down under as well. Was really interesting to be working with those guys and girls too. So
indeed,
it's really really interesting. Yeah,
indeed. Now we're off to talk about helicopters with the next one, and Boeing delivering something to the US Air Force.
As I was talking about last week, it's kind of fun to think that we've been on the show long enough that some of the stories we talked about a couple years ago in a conceptual manner are now actually coming to fruition, with the government and defense acquisitions process. But this next military story is from avweb.com. Boeing and Leonardo have delivered the first 4 MH-139 Grey Wolf twin-engine helicopters to the U.S. Air Force. The 4 test aircraft are part of a $2.4 billion contract awarded to Boeing in September of 2018, which we talked about on the show, for up to 80 helicopters, training systems, and associated support equipment. The aircraft are intended to replace the Air Force's fleet of aging UH-1 Hueys, which is unbelievable that they're still in service. Leonardo Helicopters U.S. CEO Clyde Woltman said that they are thrilled that the first 4 MH-139s have been accepted by the U.S. Air Force. This aircraft is well positioned to become an important asset in the defense and security of the United States. I especially want to thank the combined program teams at Leonardo and Boeing, whose tireless work and ingenuity made this possible. Based on Leonardo's AW-139, the MH-139A is a multi-role helicopter designed for missions including protecting intercontinental ballistic missiles and transporting U.S. government officials and security forces. This aircraft is being produced at Leonardo's facility in Philadelphia. Boeing is responsible for military equipment procurement and installation along with the post-delivery support of the models. This is pretty interesting. Like I said, I can't believe that the MH-1 or the UH-1 Huey is still in service. That airplane has been shuttling people out to the missile sites in the middle of the country for years and years now. And it's pretty cool to see this new helicopter, this new next generation helicopter, kind of replace that.
See, now Mr. Warner, me and Mr. Warner play a game when these are on, you see, and when he's listening to the military, the game is that Mr. Warner sends me a photograph of said aircraft or that's being spoken about when it's been done. But unfortunately, I didn't get that one, Jonathan, until it was like 13 seconds before the end. So I'm afraid even I can't get it into the system that fast. But there we go. I do love a little game.
No, it's good. I mean, and talking of little games, the next story is a mystery to
all
both
of us,
Matt and myself. So we're going to just hand straight over to Armando for it.
Now, this last military story is from thedrive.com. Barksdale Air Force Base announced that the B-52 Stratofortress took on a particularly interesting role during a recent exercise. 4 of the bombers were equipped with a relatively sizable cargo container tailored to fit in the bomb bay in order to test the U.S. Air Force's rapid deployment concepts. The demonstration could signal a possible decrease in the logistical footprint for future operational bomber deployments. So according to a statement released by Barksdale, they explained that the 4 B-52s involved in the exercise belonged to the base's 2nd bomb wing. The fleet later deployed north to Fairchild Air Force Base in Washington between August 16th and 19th to carry out some exercises pertaining to the Agile Combat Employment Mission, or the ACE. Generally, ACE missions are centered around practicing unpredictable distributed operations from austere locations. That's to increase survivability and better generate combat power from forward areas. ACE-affiliated exercises, which we've talked about on the show a couple times, are meant to aid in establishing these techniques that would allow the Air Force to operate in a more flexible and sort of wily manner through the utilization of more austere and remote facilities and using small logistical footprints. That aspect especially underscores the importance of the B-52 demonstration, as hauling cargo is often a prevalent supporting factor for any ACE operation, really any deployment. Now, when I was in the military, it was always pretty impressive. In order to get 4 C-130s or 4 CV-22s down the line to a forward operating base, it usually took some kind of either a C-17 to do the cargo airlift for all the maintenance equipment, all the personnel, the living equipment that we were going to need for however long we were going to be there. So having this ability to sort of strap on some containers into the bomb bay of some B-52s and having them almost self-deploy, where the only thing that needs to meet them is maybe the ammunition that they're going to carry, is a pretty significant leap forward. Now, this recent test mission utilized the 4 bombers predominantly to explore this sort of innovative cargo operation, as well as demonstrating uncommon methods of delivering this maintenance support, which, as you can imagine, on a B-52 is pretty significant. Keeping these airplanes in the air with all the crew chiefs and then the specialized systems and technicians that actually have to go along with the aircraft for some of these forward operating locations. Now, the Air Force describes this cargo container as designed connect to the hardpoints inside the bomb bay of the B-52. Each aircraft is capable of carrying 2 of the containers, 1 in each bomb bay, both of which can hold up to 5,000 pounds of maintenance and support equipment, providing obviously a single B-52 with the airlift capability of about 10,000 pounds total cargo. So pretty cool here, and it's fun to see the innovation, the continued innovation. You know, as you guys look back. Anybody looks back in history and you can see the way that aircraft have been adapted or readapted from their originally and intended purposes or design purposes to some different mission sets. It's always fun to see that, you know, all the way back to the beginnings of aviation, how aircraft are modified, but more so the innovation and ingenuity of the people that work on these aircraft. It's pretty cool to see that kind of come to fruition.
Now, this is one of the things with it. I mean, it's an iconic aircraft, full stop. Anyway, isn't it? The B-52. But as Armando's alluding to there, I mean, the various configurations, connotations of this outstanding aircraft. As you say, it's almost like a sort of time capsule, isn't it? As it works its way through, and then
adaptability is the name of the game, isn't it? In the cargo and military world, definitely. Yeah.
Well, I mean, how old is the 52? I mean, it's been in the air a long time, hasn't it? It's been since, like, I want to say 60s. You know, it's been flying for a long old time. Somebody in the chat room will know the answer to that, I have no doubt. But it's been in the air a long old time, as you say, and it's continuously evolving into this, sort of still relevant even now. Still relevant even now.
Absolutely. Well, the final story in this section is on the warbirdsnews.com. And it says the de Havilland Moth Club held a flying event at a historic airfield in Bicester on Thursday, August the 18th, 2022, just the other day. It was a great success with around 50 aircraft, mostly de Havilland in origin, attending, with the majority of these being DH-82 Tiger Moths. Well, Bicester is a small rural town just north of Oxford, and in fact about a 25-minute drive from where I live, actually, in the south of England. The earliest recorded flight here dates back to 1911, when a Bristol box kite stuttered into the skies from a farmer's field. By 1916, however, the Royal Flying Corps had established an aerodrome nearby, but this soon became RAF Bicester, following the RFC's merger with the Royal Naval Air Service on April the 1st, 1918. Developed into a bomber station in 1925, RAF Bicester underwent further expansion in 1936. By the eve of World War II, RAF Bicester served in a bomber training role, although this also included glider training once the build-up for D-Day began. The August flying was a wonderfully relaxed event. The Tiger 9 team performed a flyover appropriately with 9 Tiger Moths, and there was a fair bit of ad hoc local flying, especially from a locally based joyriding business which operates Tiger Moths. Several more exotic de Havilland types were also on hand, of course, such as the DH-83 Fox Moth, DH-80 Puss Moth, and the 2 DH-85 Leopard Moths, and several DH-87B Hornet Moths. Notable absences, however, included a lack of DH-60 Gypsy Moths and the twin-engine de Havilland types, which was a little surprising as the airfield could have easily accommodated them. For many attendees, though, a highlight of the show included seeing the newly restored DH-82A Tiger Moth, which was Golf Bravo Tango Oscar Golf, formerly NM192 with the RAF. The aircraft now wears an authentic US Army Air Forces livery depicting DE-745, one of the several Tiger Moths which the US military operated from UK bases during World War II. We're very grateful to Nigel Hitchman for this fascinating look at significant British vintage aviation flying the other week, and one with substantial connections to World War II as well. So that's just up the road from me. It's about a 25-minute drive from here, and it did play a significant role in the Second World War, as we say.
The Bristol Blenheim, that is such a unique looking aircraft, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I love stuff like that. It's
phenomenal.
It's really, really good. I'm just having a thumb through some of the pictures on their website, actually. Some great pictures there.
That's the Tiger 9 formation, isn't it? Yeah.
Indeed, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I think you did all right there, Nev. That's the military done. That weren't too bad, was it?
Oh, I think we got away with that. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. Now we were. I was sort of looking through the notes and stuff for next week, and I've got down in my diary here that you and Carlos are not available for that. But you were saying there might be a chance you could still join us.
I think as long as the with a sufficient tailwind and good bit of traffic, we might be okay. So let's tell you what's happening next week. It's the Jersey International Air Display in Jersey on Thursday afternoon of next week, and Carlos and I are flying out there on Wednesday. There is a reception on the Wednesday evening at 6 o'clock, not just for us, I don't think, but for the rest of the participants as well. So that'll be great. So we're going to do some filming there, and then we're going to be filming the air display itself, which starts just after lunch on the Thursday and finishes just before dinner time on the Thursday evening. Then we're flying back quite early on Friday morning back to Heathrow. So all being well, I think we should be able to do the show.
Oh, there we are.
Friday. My only slight problem at the moment is the weather, as I may have mentioned before the show started. The current forecast is thundery showers and moderate winds, and this is that's not a good air.
Like I say, that doesn't sound very.
Forecast.
I guess that doesn't sound very conducive to as I say. It's what was it I was saying earlier? It's like low cloud and winds and are not an air show's friend.
No. So we're going to have to see how we get on with that. And I mean, if the worst comes to worst, it'll just be Carlos and me in the Premier Inn in Somalia, talking to each other,
playing cards,
and saying how nice the bacon and sausages
bacon rolls are. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, indeed. Well, let's hope it doesn't come to that. I'm sure, as you say, because I mean that's one of the. I think you were sort of saying things that not the static displays and stuff there this time round, unfortunately. So as I say, if, sort of pinning all hopes on a flying display, essentially.
I'm hoping so. Let's see how we get on with some interviews. It's. We've been in conversation with the organisers a couple of times in the last fortnight or so. So let's see how we get on, and we shall bring you some content of some description.
Excellent. Can't wait. It's going to be fun. If nothing else, it'll be nice to go to Jersey for a few days. It's a lovely part of the world, indeed. So that's pretty much where we bring the show to a close. Yes, I know. We've survived, Nev. This is half the battle, isn't it?
We should have mentioned actually that Carlos is on his little break this weekend.
I know.
Up in Norfolk.
I know. He's away with Mrs. Carlos. The lovely Gemma, long surfing. Yeah, they're off to the glorious world of North Norfolk, as I think we were saying at the top of the show. But gonna be fun, as I say. Looking forward to the show next week if you can make it. Let's whiz through some social medias then, if we may. To get us in touch with us via WhatsApp, all you have to do is open up the app and pop in the number +44 757 2249 166. That's +44 757 2249 166. Our social media links, all you need to do is just pop yourselves onto either Facebook, Twitter or Instagram. Search for Plain Talking UK. You'll find our social links on there. Our website, where you can do everything from buy mugs, including military mugs. They will be available hopefully from this evening onwards, all being well. Absolutely, yes. I've had all the design and everything all popped through. Producer John has put that together for us, but take yourself to the website plaintalkinguk.com. On there are links to things like Patreon as well, so you can contribute towards the show, perhaps using our Patreon links, or you can do your shopping through the Amazon link, which is on the site as well. That enables you to even if you're just buying yourself a lead, you can use that or a memory card for your camera, Jonathan Warner, so that you can contribute towards the show without it actually physically costing you anything as well. And of course the email, we'd love to hear from you. You can send anything into that, as indeed did Richard Adams and a couple of other people this week as well. It's podcast at planetalkinguk.com, and we'd love to hear some of your feedback. Why not record yourself a little voice note using your phone and send that to us either via the WhatsApp number or by email address. It is podcast at planetalkinguk.com.
Now, we may have had some issues with a couple of listeners that have mentioned it to us. They couldn't get hold of the last
last two now. Yes.
Downloads. So we've been fiddling with a few things and sent quick support off to our media hosting folks.
Yes.
See what they've got to say about it.
Indeed,
and then,
yes.
Hopefully we'll get that fixed for you.
Yes, we've got a very unusual situation essentially where everything is showing on this end that episode 423 and 424 have been published, but for reasons best only known to our service provider, they haven't arrived with everything from Spot. It's not just one provider, unfortunately. It appears to be all of them where it's not available. If you download your podcast using an RSS feed, you should be unaffected by the hiccup. But if you do use something like Podbean or iTunes or indeed Spotify, we are having problems for some reason that not being there. The YouTube version is there though, if you're inclined to listen and or watch from there. But we are working very hard behind the scenes to get whatever that glitch is sorted out as soon as possible. So hopefully
it's somebody else's fault.
That's the important thing here. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. We've done everything we can at this end, but for some reason it's not appearing on our on our various platforms. So we're looking into that as we speak.
Lovely. And finally, just a very quick message that's coming from Alan Loveday, who says, thanks, guys, for covering the heritage article about the Cornwall Museum. It was great and hopefully will generate some interest and support.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we're very happy to, Alan. And as you all know, we're very passionate about aviation heritage in this country.
Indeed. And who knows, we may even give it another mention tomorrow next week in the hope that we can get we'll see if we can get an answer to that, because that's just going to be awful, isn't it, if that does happen.
Yeah.
Well, Nev, I think it's time to say goodbye.
It is. Well, thank you very much indeed to everybody that's been in the chat room tonight and for your contributions as ever. We'll be back. The show will be back next week, definitely at the usual time of 7 o'clock. Whether Carlos and I will be here is up for question. But
it might just be me at this stage.
Well, I was going to say that's going to be an interesting couple of hours, isn't it? That's for sure.
Yeah. I'll find something to talk about. Don't worry about that.
We are aiming to be back anyway. So let's see how we get on reporting back from the Jersey display. So thanks ever so much for your company this evening, and hope you have a great weekend. Bye for now.